This is your place for all things Grand Rapids Griffins and all things Toledo Walleye. This is the Hockeytown West Podcast with your host, Brandon Cook and Nick Harrington.
Welcome to the Hockeytown West Podcast, your source for everything Grand Rapids Griffins and Toledo Walleye hockey. I am one of your hosts, Brandon.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Travis.
And we are back with another episode for our Summer of the Storm series, part 4. This one, guys, we just got done recording the actual interview. We're doing the intro now, but oh my God, you guys are in for a treat. This is fantastic. We had Andy Suhy on the show, and his stories were all time. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Before we get to the interview, Travis, there was actually a Toledo trade that happened with the Walleye. So break it down for us. Tell us what happened here.
Yeah, so it's funny because I was looking at the roster. I've kind of kept it going as the signings have come in, and Toledo is at like 10 defensemen. So definitely could afford to make a move. And I know Pat kind of told us that he wanted to be out in front of it with defense this year. So he ships Cole Cameron to the Maine Mariners for Griffin Ness. Made his pro debut last year, only 2 games with Maine. Before that, he played 4 seasons at the University of North Dakota. Not a lot of points per game. But I think where this trade kind of maybe came to be is where he was before he went to the NCAA. He played in the USHL. Pat was a coach in the USHL. So me and a buddy were talking about it today that, you know, that could have been part of why this came to be. And, you know, maybe being around a more skilled team that he could maybe find that offensive upside that he had when he was with, I believe it's Waterloo. I believe that's right. When he was in the USHL, he had 33 points in 57 games in his first year. And the second year, he had 44 points in 45 games. So clearly, I mean, he can play. It's just a matter of kind of unlocking that at the professional level now. And he's coming to a roster where they're known for normally having a high-flying offense. So I'd love to see where this goes. Obviously, now you can roll 4 lines, 3 pairs on D. So you actually have to dress 12 forwards now. So, and Toledo needed a few. So, like I said, having a couple extra bodies on defense that were already signed, this kind of gave them the flexibility to make a trade. So, not normal that you see a trade in the summer, but at this level, this isn't anywhere close to the NHL. But definitely exciting. Gives us some news as we're waiting for some more player signings, which we hopefully get soon. So, but yeah, that's pretty much what I got on that.
Was Maine a good team last year?
I don't think they even made the playoffs. I could be wrong. I'd have to look back, but I mean, they came into Toledo and beat us one night. That was the Bednar night, if you remember, where he had the off night, and then from there he kind of found his game. But they were in for, I think, 2 days, might have been 3, but you know, it's just one of those teams, I guess. They're on the East Coast. They got a beautiful jersey, beautiful logo, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, obviously wish Cole Cameron the best. Played a few games for Toledo last year, but always excited when you get a new player.
It's like they shipped out a depth piece and gained another depth piece, but there's potential that Pat probably saw in this kid in the USHL that he thinks he can unlock. And I like the gamble. I'm here for that. And like you said, it's a high-flying offense on this roster that they should be able to do something with them. But I don't think the Walleye are done yet. I think there's still a couple more moves that are going to happen here. Not trade-wise. I think there's a couple more signings that we'll see here to really establish the depth and see what this roster looks like. And we still don't know what the back and forth between Toledo and Grand Rapids will look like. Training camp's coming up, and we'll kind of get a better picture of what this roster is going to look like.
Yeah, I think we only really have one real lock. That's Redicop. Probably is your first call up to GR. But outside of that, I think it's kind of wait and see. And the goaltenders, we just don't know which 2 or if they get all 3, which I don't think is going to be the case, but you never know.
Yeah, that's going to be the most interesting thing to watch, and we'll get a good idea of that over the next couple of weeks here. But that's all we have for Walleye news. We thought we'd throw that in before this interview here real quick because it's an update that surprised us all. I saw a trade come up my notifications on my phone today, and I was like, the heck? And here we are. So welcome Griffin Ness. Everyone's joked that he's destined to play in Grand Rapids just because of his name, but crazy things has happened in the world. But I think if we're at that point, disaster happened. But anyways, I think it's time. Send this over to Andy Suhy. Again, everyone, you're in for a treat with this interview. Before we head to that, we'll jump over to an ad break. Nick will read the ad when we come back. Sit down with Andy Suhy.
NFL Week 1 is here, and a new season means new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a player to score a touchdown. Currently, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown at plus 700 to score 2+ touchdowns. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the best place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 and get 1 month of NFL Plus premium on us. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. In Connecticut, help available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Will Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. cdkng.com/football for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
And welcome back to the show, everyone. It's our pleasure to bring you part 4 of the Summer of the Storm series, and boy, do we have a good one for you. Western Michigan alumni, Detroit Red Wings draft pick, and of course, back-to-back Riley Cup champion, Andy Suhy. Andy, welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, guys. Always love talking hockey. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. How's the summer been treating you? Pretty good?
Summer's good. So no pickup hockey in the summer, so I got a lot of time on my hands. I'm not sure what to do.
That's fair. But
fair. Then I remember I've got 3 teenage daughters, and they have plenty for me to do. So
that's fair.
Them kids, they keep you moving. That's for sure.
I thought playing in the East Coast League and fighting 6'5" gorillas was tough. Raising 3 teenage daughters is much harder. Anyone that has teenage daughters knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I don't envy you. I heard the girls are probably the hardest. So.
Yeah, that's God's sense of humor. Hockey player, 3 daughters coming your way. Okay, thank you.
Oh man,
we're actually going to backtrack a little bit before we get to Toledo and all the wild stories from the Storm. But you played at Western Michigan. What was that experience like for you, and what was your favorite memory?
That's an interesting question. I was watching your podcast with Alex Hicks, and I listened to him talk about his experience at Wisconsin Eau Claire, right? And it sounded pretty magical. Sounds like what you want a college experience to be like. And he's talking about his evolution and him growing. My experience at Western Michigan, it was not spectacular, but it prepared me for my experience in Toledo, if that makes sense. And the reason being, I'll tell you, I'm a Detroit kid, right? So I'm a Detroit native. Didn't have a lot of offers. So I also listened to your Ian Duncan piece, and Duncan was a blue chipper, right? So Duncan's got every school, competing for his services. I had a couple offers. Notre Dame, new program, no money, couldn't afford to go to Notre Dame. In hindsight, would have loved to go to Notre Dame. Ohio State giving me a little bit of money. And then Western Michigan give me full boat. So it was an easy choice for me based on follow the money, right? So go to Western Michigan, have a decent freshman year, get a lot of playing time, end up getting drafted the summer after by the Red Wings. And you guys are probably familiar with the 1989 draft class, right? Pretty good Red Wings draft class. I think you got Sillinger, Bugner, Lidstrom, Konstantinov, I think some guy named Fedorov, and then you got Suhy in the 8th round. So I'm like, wow, I'm in pretty good company. This should be easy. And then the next 3 years of college, there was a coaching change. Probably the reason why they have the transfer portal. There was a coaching change. New coach wasn't maybe a fan of my type of game. I didn't have a role on the team. My playing time actually diminished. So coming off my draft summer, going into my sophomore year, I'm a NHL draft pick. I'm thinking this is going to be awesome. I'm going to keep getting better every year. And actually the opposite happened. I started getting less playing time. My senior year, I was a healthy scratch a couple times. And it was just not a fun experience overall, because I come from the Detroit Little Caesars mid-major program. We won a national championship. Had this guy named Smolinski on our team, which he scored 1,000 goals that year. So it's pretty easy to win a championship with Smolinski on your team. But I went from a championship year in midgets to a college career that was, I would just say, less than spectacular. And the reason being is, when I look back at it, 35 years is just, I wasn't sure what my role was. I don't know that I had a role. And so I finished Western, loved the school, loved the place, loved the friends I made, but it wasn't like my hockey career did not go like this. If anything, it went like this, and maybe a little bit up and down. It was kind of bumpy. In hindsight, if they would have had the transfer portal back then, I probably would have left. And I'm not a big fan of the transfer portal. I think it gives guys an easy way to just, I don't like the coach, I'm not getting good playing time, I'm going to pick up my stuff and go somewhere else. But I think in hindsight, that's probably what I might have done, because it just wasn't like a perfect fit for me. Again, going back to my Alex Hicks comparison, what he described sounds like what you want. And that's not necessarily what I had.
Where would you have gone?
Yeah.
I don't know. But what I tell my kids, and I have a daughter that's a competitive dancer at Ohio State. I got a daughter that's a D1 volleyball player at UConn, and a younger daughter coming up. And I tell them all the time, based on my experience, is you got to find a good fit. The sports will be over sooner rather than later, right? If you can go to college and play a sport, you're in the 1%, right? That's going to be over typically in 4 years for most people. And you got to find some that's a good fit. You like the program, you like the culture, you like the leadership, you like the coach. When I think back at my time at Western Michigan, if I was talking to my younger self, I would say some of those things were probably missing, and which is why I wasn't really a good fit. Would I had been fit somewhere else, maybe with less money, been something like that? Could have been. Who knows?
Sorry.
But the reason why I tell you that is because, you talk to hockey players, everybody's got like a different path, right? They got a different path and different. Most of us have the same beginning, right? We started when we were 4 years old. We come from modest means, blue collar families. I remember we used to take papers back to the recycling mill to pay for the ice bill. Our moms are like the gold standard, like hockey moms. They're up at 5 o'clock in the morning with, in freezing cold rinks. We all had, anyone you talk to at any level that's a hockey player is going to have that same beginning, similar beginning. But then the paths are going to go a million different ways, and you're going to hear a lot of different stories. So what you're going to hear from me is probably different from what you heard from Alex, what you hear from Duncan, what you're going to hear from Deasley or anyone else.
I think that's the big thing of why we want to get these different perspectives too for everybody. Like anybody that's growing up and watching the game or playing the game, like they're going to learn a lot of this stuff from different perspectives, which is why we're trying to get everybody from that storm, because everybody, like you said earlier, like everybody kind of saw it a little differently throughout the years, and like how the stories were a little bit different. So it's kind of us like putting the pieces back together for everybody from the outside.
It is. It's a huge puzzle. I mean, it's just a huge, and just when you think you have all the pieces, like I had a conversation, I picked up a few pieces watching your Alex Hicks show, right? Like he said a couple things that I've known Hicksy for 35. He said a couple things I didn't know. I'm like, I didn't know that. Like, I've known him for 30 years. How do I not know that about him? It's like these puzzle pieces just keep coming, and I mean that's the beauty of it, though, is that you can get a bunch of hockey players together that hadn't seen each other in 30 years, like we did at the Storm reunion, and it was like just riding a bike. It's like we like just hadn't skipped a beat, and the stories just started going. The chirping started going. Remember that story. That's not how it happened. Don't you remember you did this? You said you weren't going to tell anybody. But I mean, it just went on and on for 3 straight days. It was so much fun.
Want to touch on something. So you played with Keith Jones and Bill Armstrong. What was your experience with those two guys?
Oh my God, Jonesy! I'm still scratching my head. I love Jonesy, great guy, and I look at the success that he's had. And we came in as freshmen together at Western Michigan, right? And he was the most unathletic looking person I've ever seen, right? So as athlete, you shower with guys, right? And I come into Western Michigan. I'm lifting weights 4 hours a day. I look like a bodybuilder. I'm 6'1", 215. I've got no body fat. I mean, I'm just like, I look like the Hulk, which is probably not a good body type now. That wouldn't work in today's game, right? But this is 1988. And then Jonesy comes in. I'm like, is it the equipment guy? Is it like, who is this guy? And then we'd be doing like all these tests and stuff, and he wasn't even like, he didn't even try. He was Phil Kessel before Phil Kessel, I think. I don't know. I think I maybe just thought of that, but he might have been Phil Kessel before Phil Kessel. And he was just like the funniest guy. He never took anything too seriously. Obviously a great hockey player, right? And you could tell on the off the ice, I would say that, school probably wasn't his main focus. But I think because he always knew he was going to get to the NHL. And you could see he just had that natural talent. He was gifted. I remember somebody commenting on a game. They said, Jonesy looks like a man among boys out there. I'm like, well, okay, that's that's fair. He was really good, and he was fun to play with, and I just love watching what he's doing, like the book and all the things, and just how, because he's probably not the most like glamorous or sexy talented player, but the guy just works hard, right? And he's been good everywhere he's been. I don't think that's by chance. Billy Armstrong, that just a good guy. One funny story I remember about Army is you guys are going to laugh at me, but I was one of the few guys had a car on campus, right? Because I came from Detroit, so I'm only 2.5 hours from home. I've got this old 1983 Pontiac Trans Am with T-tops. I mean, it's so cheesy, like the worst car to have in a Michigan winter, right? It's rear wheel drive. It's got the big slicks on the back. It's like the dumbest car. I don't know why I got it. But anyways, I had it. I went to college in it. And Army loved driving in it, though. Army, like, Suhy, I think he's maybe 2 or 3 years older. I think maybe we played for 1 or 2 years, right? So he was an upperclassman. I was a freshman. He'd be like, Suhy, can you come pick me up for practice? And he just loved driving around with we take the T-tops off and drive around. And then sure enough, so Army leaves. And again, I can't remember whether it's my junior or senior or whatever. He signs his deal with Philadelphia, I think, right? And he spends a signing bonus on an IROC Z, a Camaro IROC Z. He brings it back to campus, and he's like, Suhy, look at my car. And it was like, yes, Army, you've got your own sweet car now. So I thought that was kind of funny. I mean, I always knew he liked the Trans Am, and then he got his own. So the reason why I went into, and I was debating on the Western Michigan Storm, like everyone wants to paint a rosy picture, right? And I'm not throwing shade at Western Michigan. I got friends over there now. Know the coach, rebuilding the program, doing an awesome job. They've got a top 10 team every year, right? We were a 500 club. The reason why I tell you that is the segue into Toledo is so I graduate and the Wings invite me to training camp in 1992. I'm a hometown draft pick. And I'm talking to my agent that summer. And the training is different. So what am I doing all summer? I'm lifting weights, right? I'm running and lifting weights, bench press, hip sled, squats. I mean, I literally look like a gorilla, not how they train now, right? So a little bit different. And I talked to my agent, and he's like, Andy, I got good news and bad news. And I sort of remember the conversation. He's like, you're a hometown draft pick. You had, a decent college career. It wasn't decent, I would say. He said, but you're not going to get you're an 8th round pick. You're not going to get a contract. He says, and they're stacked with Hall of Famers in Detroit, and they're stacked with future Hall of Famers in Adirondack. And I said, okay, that's great. I'm like, maybe I should have got drafted by another team. He says, and they're all under contract. And he says, go to camp and just try to do something and make a name for yourself. I'm like, okay. So I go to camp. I'm in the best shape of my life. Little known fact, and I've told this to probably only 100 people, is, this is 1992. We did strength testing, right? Like just stupid stuff. Everyone was big. And and I set the record for pull-ups. You have to do, they test you on pull-ups. And there was a guy there, I can't remember the guy's name, and he would make you go all the way down and he would lock your elbows out so you couldn't cheat. You had to go all the way up and put your chin over. And I did 21 pull-ups. And I went down the list. I checked the list and looked at everyone's name. Iserman didn't do 21. Probert didn't do 21. Federer. I'm like, I got the most pull-ups, right? So that was like a small win for me. But anyway, so I go to camp, and it's a bizarre. You probably hear this. It's a bizarre. It's a surreal experience, right? I'm in a locker room, and it's inter squad, 80 guys, break you up into 4 teams of 20. I got Probert on my team. Probert's taping a stick in the door, smoking a cigarette. He's got an ash like this big on a cigarette, but nobody will tell him to ash it. He keeps it in his mouth. Literally, the ash is as long as a pen, and nobody says a word to him, and he doesn't ash it. He just lets it roll all the way out. And he's just taping a stick, and he might be the guy that had the worst athletic body next to Jonesy, right? He literally did just a big guy, but like didn't spend a lot of time in the gym. You could tell, right? And so you're in a locker room, and you're in a locker room with Fedorovs on my team, and I'm like, this is just really bizarre. I mean, I got posters of these guys on my wall at home. So long story short is we have 2 exhibition games. So the inter squad's fun. I come around to make a pass, the first pass from behind the net. Somebody lifts my stick up, steals the puck, turns around and shelves it. It's Iserman. And I literally said, you got to do that. And he like laughed and skated away. I'm like, really? Like, you're going to be a Hall of Famer? You got to make me look stupid out here? And it was fun like that. And I remember I got a picture on my wall. You can't probably see it, but a picture on my wall in this collage of me and Probert kneeling down next to each other, like catching our breath. And it was just like 2 weeks that like Probert, like the nicest guy in the world, right? Like he would just take everyone under your wing. He's just talking. He's like, hey, don't be nervous. Just go out in here, just like coaching you up and stuff like. Everybody in camp was like that. There were no egos. There were no like you're just a lowly 8th round pick or you're a minor league guy. And I've been up in the show for 5 years. There was none of that. It was the funnest 2 weeks of my life. The guys were awesome. And at the end of it, they had these 2. They called them rookie games then. Like what do they call them? Development games now. And we played the Maple Leafs twice. And remember, my agent's like, you got to do something. And I'm thinking about this all week. I'm like, I got to do something. And we got a pretty good rookie team, right? So this is Draper's first year in camp. We got McCarty. We got Chris Osgood as our goalie. We got Jamie Pusher, Dallas Drake. We had like a really good team, right? Yeah. Of course, this first. And so we go out and we're playing the Maple Loafs, and everyone from Detroit hates Toronto. And I'm like, fuck this. I'm getting in a fight. Keep in mind, I played college. I'm going to talk about college fighting in a second, but I've never been, not like OHL junior fight. I haven't been in 50 fights, right? But I'm like, I'm probably the strongest guy here. So I go out the first shift and I get in a fight with the biggest guy. And it was a good fight. I'd call it a draw. It was a decent fight. We'll call it a draw. And then the game goes on, and then McCarty gets in like 7 fights. And I'm like, okay, I think that's his job, and I think he's gonna do all right. And it was fun. So I got in a fight, I scored a goal. I'm like, what else can I do? Right? I'm a stay at home, shut down D. I'm not like an offensive Cale McCarty, but I score a goal, I get in a fight, I have a really good camp, and then they call you in the office. And like Brian Murray's there, and I think Jimmy Devellano's there, and they're like, yeah, you had a great camp. We've got no room for you. Similar to the Hicksey story, right? Hicksey probably was better than guys that were on the contract. I don't probably was, but he's like, we're loaded in Adirondack. We're going to send you down to Toledo. And I look over to the side and I see fucking McSorley just smiling. Like he's smiling ear to ear. He's like, I don't know what, he saw something in me. He's like, I got something here, right? And I just came off a good camp, and I wasn't sure what to expect. My expectations were kind of low. And so when they called me in the office and said, hey, good job, we're going to send you to Toledo. And then I look over and they're like, this is Chris McSorley, the coach. And he's like smiling. He's ready to sell me something. And I'm like, oh boy. and then the rest is history. So, but that reminds me, and this may go on, but I'm going to go back to a college part, the college thing, because it to me, this was like a trajectory. You know, things happen in your life and your trajectory can go one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
We were playing, and I remembered this, and it just, we were playing a home and home with Michigan State. So first game was in Munn in East Lansing. And this is probably 1990, maybe my junior year. And Michigan State had Smolinski, and their big tough guy was, you guys know who the big tough guy was in Michigan State? Played a lot of years in the show. Big tough guy. Jim Cummins. You guys know who Jim Cummins is, eh?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Jim Cummins, another Michigan native, Detroit guy, right? So he's on Michigan State. I mean, he's just a big guy. And at this time, there wasn't a lot of fighting in college, but he and I got into it in the corner at the end of the game. And like, we start to get tied up, you know, it's like right before a fight when you start to you're getting tied up or whatever. He grabs my cage, pulls my cage off my helmet, like breaks the weld, like just with his hand. His hand is like a gorilla's hand. He pulls the cage off of my helmet, so I'm stuck wearing the stupid Cooper helmet with no cage on it, but the little metal piece is sticking out. And then he and I exchanged like words. We're like, we'll settle this tomorrow. It was the end of the game, and we knew we were playing the next day back in Kalamazoo. And we're like, we'll settle straight. And I was chomping at the bit. I'm like, Jimmy Cummins, like this, I can make a name for myself, right? If I can get in a fight with this guy, we can both do something, catch somebody's attention, whatever. And I know he's thinking the same thing too, right? So he's playing college hockey, but he's mapping out the next steps. He knows that if he's going to make it in the NHL, he's going to be an enforcer. And we're roughly the same size. Although at the time his hands seemed like they were like twice as big as my head. I don't know. It's a flashback. So anyways, so that whole night I'm amped up. The next day I'm amped up. I'm like, I'm going to fight Jim Cummins, and we're going to figure out how to do this. And he's itching. I mean, there's scouts in the stands. I remember Nick Polano's like, yeah, Red Wings are going to be there. Some other people are going to be there, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I got to do something. I don't get off the bench the next game. I was in trouble. So here's the problem. McSorley would not do this. And this is all leading up to my McSorley time, right? This made me appreciate my 2 years with Chris. I'm chomping at the bit. I'm sure he is too. I dress for the game, but I don't get off the bench. I don't get one fucking shift. And Jimmy Cummins is running around wanting to kill somebody. Like you could just see it. Like, you know, like when Scott Stevens used to get that look in his eye, like he had like that look. And I'm looking and he's skating by the bench, like looking at me. And I'm like, I can't get off the fucking bench. Like, I don't know if he thought I was afraid to go. I'm like, I want to go. I will jump over the bench. Right. So he picks a fight. So he's going to get in a fight with somebody, and I can't get off the bench, and he gets in a fight with Shane Redshaw, and Shane Redshaw, great guy. I would call him like a Cam Neely power forward type guy. He's big and he's strong, but not a fighter. And Jimmy Cummins cut his face up like I hadn't seen it. Like, I mean, he got his right hand loose. We watched the video in the locker room after the game, and he cut him up really good. And that bothered me because that should have been me. And I called, it took me 10 years to realize I called Shane Redshaw up 10 years later. And I said, Shane, I'm sorry that he beat the shit out of you. That should have been my fight. I couldn't get off the bench. He's like, oh, sweet, don't worry about it. It's like, big fucking deal. He's like, I mean, that's how hockey players are, but literally I felt so bad about it. But to me, that was like a violation of like the hockey code, right? Like I should not have been kept on the bench, and Shane should not have had to do that for me, because that was my task that night.
I wonder if it was more like a psychological thing, like the coach was doing just to like amp him up. Like he's so pumped, he's ready, he's looking for you, and then he doesn't get the chance to go at you.
I don't. I don't know. I think he just, I think he didn't, I think he didn't like my style of game. And it was just unfortunate. I mean, again, the trajectory. So I'm not saying I would have got an AHL contract or got a position in Adirondack, but you have opportunities in your life to make a moment, right? And that was setting up to be one. I'm like, I'm going to get in a fight with Jim Cummins, and one of the toughest guys in the league, even though it wasn't fighting. Everyone knew he was tough as nails. Him and Chris Tamer. Tamer's at Michigan, right? And those two guys would fight every once in a while. And the opportunity sort of went right past me because of something that was outside of my control. And it clearly still bothers me. But the reason why I tell you that is to get you to the next step, to the McSorley story, right? So coming full circle, I land in Toledo. I'm not sure what to expect. And it's, I mean, you guys know, we don't call it that. We don't call it now. Nowadays, the East Coast League, I mean, you look at the Walleye and you look at the Griffins, they look very similar, right? They're guys and go back and forth and very up-tempo, fast-paced skill game. Back when we were playing, and we called it the Gong Show. Like the NHL's a show, the East Coast was called either the Gong Show because it was like Slapshot at times, or we called it the East Ghost League. Being ghost meaning you're like a ghost because no scouts ever come and watch you, right? And so it's not like the ideal place that you wanted to land, but you're like, I want to start here. And McSorley, like from day one, and remember I said in college I never knew what my role. Day one, McSorley told me exactly what my fucking role was. And it was just, I don't know, it just like released me. Like you need, and I use this in business all the time. I'm like, you got to have the right person in the right role. They got to know what their role is, right? And they have to just do that. And you can't have them in the wrong role. Like you couldn't put me on the power play. I would be no good on. Like, he said, Andy, I don't need you to score goals. You're not going to play on the power play. I need you. You're going to kill penalties, and I need you to make it fucking unpleasant for their team to be around our net. And I want you to make it fucking miserable for everyone that comes into this building. That's all you. I don't care what you don't have to fucking go end to end. You don't have to score any goals. You're not going to play. You're not going to see one shift on the power play. I need you to just make sure that nobody wants to come in our fucking building and no one wants to go near the net. I said, okay, I can fucking do that. Okay. I'm like, why didn't someone tell me this before? Like in college, I'm trying to go end to end. I'm wondering why it's not working because I can't go end to end, right? And so that's a little bit of, I think, Chris's mad scientist magic is getting people in the right roles. And I think you'll hear that story probably different ways from different guys you talk to. And for me, it was liberating. The 2 years I spent under Chris were my two favorite years of all time. They were so fun. I felt so valued. I felt like a part of the team. I felt like I was contributing. I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to do, what I was built to do. I mean, I was a proverbial stay-at-home shutdown D shot blocker, and I fucking loved it. And I was good at it. I mean, I would joke, I blocked so many shots that I would be sitting on the bench and get hit by the puck. It just would always find me. And he made sure to put me in that role the same way he did with Hicksey and the same way he did with Duncan, the same way he did with Diesel. Is I think that's part of his magic, and that's why those teams were so special.
I joked in one of the episodes, I don't remember which one, but I was like, he sold the team to everyone he brought there so darn well. And like you said, the mad scientist constructing this powerhouse, it's just insane. It's insane to me.
So here's an interesting stat, because I love stats like you guys, and I spent a little bit of time in Hockey DB just doing some research and jogging my memory. And so I think I mentioned, Travis, and we didn't realize this until we got together for the reunion. There's only 7 players that have both rings, right? We never even thought about it. Nobody even like counted. And then we sat down and we're like, hey, how many rings you got? You got 2. And then we're like, how many actually do? And so we counted. We were like, okay, Duncan and Hicks and Deasley and Corbo, Pahalski and Judson. And like there's only 7 of us, right? I went back, and so on a roster, there's 20 guys on a roster, right? And if you keep, give or take, and if you keep, if 20 players any given night, if you look at the rosters for those 2 years, knowing there's only 7 of us that have 2 rings, there's over 60 different names that go through those rosters. Think about that. So you want to talk about the mad scientist bringing people in. So, and I think Hicksy said this, is he had that core. I was fortunate enough to be a part of that core. He had that core, and then he was always experimenting, bringing people. And you see people that came in for 2 games, not a good fit, didn't understand Toledo hockey, didn't have a role for them, gone the next day. Someone would come in and stick, and then someone would leave. And you just had, like, he was never. You talk about him being a salesman. He was never standing still. He was always doing something. He was always on the phone. He wanted to win. We had a model that he was building around, but I don't think any day we felt like we could win any day in any game, but I don't feel like we ever thought we were done building, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
It never stopped. It never stopped.
Level. Always ready to go to that next level, like just throughout the season.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I looked at I'm like, that's 65 people, 65 different people. I'm like, I totally forgot about that person. They came in, they played 3 games. I think they probably refused to block a shot, and McSorley sent them out. Like, it literally was that simple.
Oh, you're gone.
Yeah, no, you guys. That's the funny thing is, you guys think I'm joking. I'm like, I'm pretty sure. Or bailed out on a check, or did something like that is not Toledo hockey. It's like 1 strike and you're out.
So out of those 7 guys, like, what made those championship runs like so special for you guys? Like, there was only those 7. What made you guys kind of like that core?
Yeah, I don't.
Besides eating pucks.
That might be a question for McSorley. I don't know. I got to be honest with you. I feel this is going to sound a little cheesy. I feel like blessed, just like blessed. Like it was my home for 2 years. I felt like a core part of the team. I felt like a leader. I felt like I had a job. I felt like I was good at my job. I felt like Chris made sure that I was in the right job and gave me support when I needed. But although he'll tell you, he said, Andy, I never had to talk to you. I just left you alone. You knew what you needed to do, and you did it. Not always. I remember one time I tried to go end to end, and he said, "You do that again, I'll fucking trade you." I skated by the bench. He's like, "I'll fucking like, trade me." I'm like, this was the 2nd year. I'm like, I fucking won a ring already. And he's like, "You do that again, I'm trading you." I'm like, okay. And that's all you would have to do, right? Never doing that again. But it's weird. People ask all the time, like, it's hard to win at any level. It's hard to win a championship, right? I mean, it's an endurance test. It's a marathon, and we won 2, and there's 7 of it. People ask all the time, like, what's different? How did you guys do that? The only way I can explain it is like, it's like the rare time in life when all the planets align, and it doesn't happen often. That's why when it does happen, and that's why we think back on it fondly, because I don't think any of us have had that experience, since then, and that's okay. Like, it happened once. That's sometimes that's one time more than a lot of people have. But the planets were just aligned, and it was from top to bottom. It was first of all, being a part of the Red Wings organization. That was awesome. The owner, Barry Soskin, best owner in the world. I mean, literally, we didn't pay for a drink ever, right? I don't know that he paid for it. He might have stiffed on the tab. I don't know, but we never paid. Like the best owner, just a player's owner, the best coach, like McSorley, just a player's coach, and he knew what he was doing. The best trainer in Scotty Lerman. We had the best players. We had chemistry. We had culture. I mean, we literally fought and battled together. There was no cliques. Like when I was in college, there were a lot of cliques, right? This was one group of guys. We always went out together. We went to the bar together. We got in fights together. We did everything together. and it was just like, again, it doesn't happen to have all of those planets lined up. And then the anchor tenant of that story is the Toledo fans. I mean, like, you get all of this, and then you put this in the sports arena, and we sold out. Like, we would sell out at a 6:00 Tuesday night game against Erie. Like it would be sold out, and the people are just rabid fans, and like the energy, you just feed off it, and it was just so blue collar. It was work ethic. It matched with the culture of the team, and the fan. Like it was hard not to perform for those fans, right? And if you didn't, you had to walk through them. I know some guys are like, well, the visitors had to walk through the fans. No, the home team had to walk through the fans too, right? We had to go through the fans, up the steps, down the steps, and if you weren't having a good game, the first time they might know, hey, Suhy, I spent $8 on this ticket. Are you going to do something? Or the next time you walk through, they're like, Suhy, like, are you going to let Spenrath walk around the ice and do that stuff? And the stories about Spenrath from the other guys you talked to. He was like the Ogie Oglethorpe of the East Coast League, big pumpkin head, nice guy. Nice guy. But he'd be skating around, and the fans were like, "Yeah, you got to go do something about it, right?" So you couldn't take a day off, you couldn't take a shift off in Toledo. And McSorley would always say that. I remember he would say, and this is the sales, just a great salesman, but because he's so, I think authentic is the word. He would say, these people spent their hard-earned money. They're coming from the Jeep plant. They're coming from the east side. They worked all day. They spent their hard-earned money to come watch you guys play hockey. You will give them a show, right? And he said that more than one time, and we knew what that meant. And if you're not bought into that, then you're not going to last long in Toledo.
Yeah. I mean, we were going to ask, why did the Toledo fans love this team so much? Because they still talk about it to this day. Anyone we talk to about Toledo hockey, they bring up the Storm, they bring up the Gold Diggers, obviously, but like they just love the Storm. You saw it in the night you guys were out there. They love you guys. It
was an intimate relationship, right? You don't have that now. Just the game has changed, right? You don't have that now. You have suites, and you have family events, and you have big inflatables and things like that. It's great. When we played in the sports arena, the fans were a part of the game. They could lean over the boards. They could grab your shirt. I go in the penalty box after a fight, and they're high-fiving you, and they're offering you beers. And, and there's a cop working the penalty box. He's like, if you ever need anything, let me know. And the fans were literally, it was interactive. They were a part of the game. They were a part of the team. We partied with the fans after. We spent time with them. We did, McSorley would have us doing all these we did like the dating game night. We did basketball on donkeys and bowling. And I mean, he had us out into the community. They call it into the community, right? He had us out into the community all the time, but it wasn't something that was forced either. I thought it was pure authenticity. We had so much fun, and we had the right guys to do that. You can't do that with every team, but we just had a really tight knit group that just loved playing for the fans, and the fans they were fun to be around. And I think they were part of the experience. I mean, you go there, I think the testament to that is probably the most memorable thing after the first championship. And I got a picture somewhere on the wall for that too, is after we won. Have you seen the video? Everyone just flooding the ice.
Oh yeah.
5,000, like that doesn't happen very often, right? And we're exhausted, long season, whatever, and 5,000 fans just scale the boards. They're on the ice. We're just going, and it was like nobody wanted to leave the ice. Like everyone wanted to stay on the ice, and it was like the fan. I run into people all the time. I was in Meijer shopping for groceries, and I hear behind me, I'm like, "Are you Andy Suhy?" And I'm like, "Oh no." So I'm like, I gotta be careful how I answer this first. I got to turn around and look, right? And they're like, "Oh, I remember when you played for Storm. I was at that game. I was on the ice." And then we'll start talking, and they'll share their story of what they did. They're like, "I was behind here, and I climbed over this huge glass, and then I fell on the ice, and my buddy picked me up, and we went." Like everyone has such a memory and a story about that night. It was so special. But to me, it just epitomized the relationship between the fans and the team. And we, like every one of the guys, anyone you ask on those teams, we were lucky to be a part of it.
Wish it could still be like that today. The fans jump on the ice. That'd be awesome. What do you think that other teams thought when they showed up to the sports arena to play you guys? What was going through their heads when they had to come out there and play against you guys?
Well, I've talked to a lot of those guys since then, and they didn't want to come. They knew it. I mean, it was a tiny rink. Everyone's on top of you, and they knew that we were the toughest. We're the most talented and the toughest team. Rare combination, and that was McSorley's thing. Everyone's got to fight, right? Even Hicksy. Trust me, Hicksy can't fight his way out of a wet paper bag. I listened to his descriptions of his fights, and I'm like, they weren't even that good. Like literally, I remember like the Bambi legs. He had the Bambi legs going, but Hicksy had the heart of a lion, right? And that's what McSorley loved. McSorley said, you don't have to win every fight, but you got to show up, right? So I mean, how can you not get motivated by that, right? He's like, I don't care. You don't have to win every fight. The other guy's got to know he's in a fight, though, right? The other guy has to know he's in a fight. You got to show up, and you got to give it your all. And that's what everyone did. Whether it was Duncan, whether it was Hicksy, I don't know that Corvo ever fighted. Booth was actually a really tough guy, but he didn't want to mess up his pretty face too much. But or his hair. He still has great hair. I saw him the other day. Walking on Central Avenue with his beautiful wife, and his hair was perfect. I literally rolled down the window, yelled out the window. I'm like, nice hair. And he's like,
Did he know it was you?
He knew it was me. Yeah. Who else is going to yell nice hair?
What was your favorite part of playing in the sports dump? I mean, the sports arena, and the least favorite part?
Okay. So the least favorite part I'll get to. The favorite part was just it fit my game, right? Like, I'm not a skill player. I'm not a great skater. It was small. It was intimate. There was nowhere to hide. I was usually the strongest guy on the ice because I was in the gym all the time. And it was just, to me, it was like a control environment, right? It's where I was supposed to, you put me on a European sheet of ice, I'll look like the worst player on the ice probably, right? And it was just old and authentic. Like the beer was warm and shitty. The nachos were going to give you a bad stomach. I mean, there's not any good food. It was just like real. It was real. It's like what Toledo is, like what Detroit is. It's blue collar. It's family values. It's hardworking people, and that just suits me. It was awesome. The least favorite thing, which leads me to a story that you may or may not want to edit out, is the shower. So, like the home locker room. Like the visitors' locker room, you said what the visiting team doesn't like coming to Toledo because the visitors' locker room was awful. It was just awful, right? The home locker room wasn't much better. So I had my stall was right next to the commode, and Corvo would go in there and take shits all the time, and I'd have to be getting dressed, and then when you flush the toilet, it took all the cold water out, so you would scald people. So you have to yell fire in the hole, right? So Rick Corvo, he's in the bathroom, and sometimes he yells fire in the hole. If somebody's in the shower, they're going to get burned probably. And so the shower is, picture this. It's after a game. We just beat Nashville 10-1. It's a Friday night. We all want to go to Arnie's or Consult Tavern. We know the tab's going to be open. There's going to be some friendlies there, and we're gonna have a good time. And you got 20 guys that are trying to get in a shower that's like the size of a shoebox. It literally is the size of a shoebox, okay? And the water's barely coming out, and we're trying to shower, and it's just not good. It's not clean. Like, it's not sanitary. It's not clean. And we were trying to get the glove smell off your hands with shaving cream and doing all that stuff. So one time. So that's my worst thing, and is just the shower and locker room, just a complete dump, the opposite of what they are today, right? So that brings me to one of my funny stories. Is we had this goalie named he was a French Canadian, and I had not had a lot of experience with true French Canadian. He's from northern Quebec. His name was Alain Harvey. And Elaine, he liked to have cocktails at the bar. And there would be some games when, if you played, he just really wasn't feeling up to it. And I'd skate by, and the ice just got surface, so it's a little wet and it's clear, beginning of the period. I go by, tap me, he's like, Andy, come here. I'm like, what's up, Elaine? He's like, Andy, these pads do not get wet tonight. I'm like, what? He's like, these pads, like he's pointing to his knee pad. These pads do not get wet tonight. And I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, I do not go down to make a save. So, I'm like, okay. I'm like, that's good to know. So you're going to be a stand-up goalie today. You're not really feeling it, and if you have to go down to make a save, we're just not going to do it. No, these pads do not get wet tonight. I'm like, okay, that's good to know.
What's McSorley think when you tell him, "Hey, goalie's playing stand-up tonight"? Like,
I didn't say anything.
Like he's getting traded.
Listen. One thing I learned about Elaine is Lane didn't play many games. Let's put it that way. So if you go back in the stats, I looked him up. I think he maybe played 10 games. So you have your answer. But I remember when he told me that, I'm like, I need to block a lot of shots, right? So I probably blocked like 20 shots that game because I knew that he did not want to get his pads very wet. Like, who said? Can you imagine saying that to somebody? And at first, when he said these pads do not get wet tonight, I didn't know what he was talking. Like, what do you mean? Like, are you gonna wash them after the game?
Are they special pads?
Yeah, no, they do not touch the ice. Oh, okay. I think one of the, I loved watching the Hicksy thing. He's such a great guy. Funny thing is, so Hicksy's in Pittsburgh. This was 2 years after I retired. And think about it. I mean, a couple of years earlier, I'm playing with Hicksy in Toledo. We're having a ton of fun. We're just screwing around. We're traveling on a dumpy bus. It's like literally like Slapshot. He gets called up. He's in Pittsburgh. I'm in Pittsburgh for work. I tell him no cell phones. I think maybe I called him on a hard landline. I said I'm going to the game. I said, oh, great, see you there. I get these tickets down by the glass. And I look up from my seat, and Hicksy is centering a line between Yager and Lemieux. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? It was like being in a Twilight Zone. I'm like, I used to cut Hicksy's hair. I had like shavers, right? And we couldn't afford a haircut, and we would go on the road, and Hicksy would be like, Stu, we like trim my hair up, and I get my little shavers out and trim his hair up. I go from cutting Hicksy's hair in the East Coast League, and he's on the ice centering Lemieux and Yager. I tell you what, it was like the most surreal thing, but it was like, it made me so happy for the guy, right? It was so awesome because you talked to him. He had worked so hard. Don't let him kid you. He's loaded with talent too. I know he worked hard and he did all the things he had to do, but he's a super talented guy. And going from Toledo to centering a line with Yager and Lemieux, I think that's pretty special.
It had to be special.
It was pretty crazy to hear him talk about that because I didn't know, like, while we were doing a little bit of research with him, like, it was just, he played with so many of these crazy players. So and he tells us the story about centering that line, and we're like, whoa. Yeah. I think it was about the same.
And I just happened to be there. Like, it was just a random thing where I was going to be there for business. And I didn't even know if he was going to play or not. And then he's like centering that line. I'm like, that's kind of awesome. And then I was in a hotel and I saw him score his first NHL goal. He tooled Adam Foote, went around him like a pylon and shelved it. And I remember, just happenstance. I think that's the connectivity of the Toledo team, right? Like, I'm in a hotel and I turn on the TV to watch a game and Hicksy scoring his first NHL goal. So I think that's the hockey gods.
That's awesome. Now, we know the championship celebration was crazy. We got to hear some stories from your perspective on those, though, because we've heard them from a couple different directions here. What do you got?
It wasn't like there was some debauchery. There was a lot of drinking. So it was 3 days straight of drinking, right? So we got up, we stayed in a hotel. So, safety first, no drinking or driving. We were locked down. The Walleye did an awesome job. They treated us like kings, absolute kings. We're up in the morning drinking whiskey at 8 o'clock. We've got events we're going to. We're skating. We're doing fun stuff. To me, it was more of just the catching up, because I talk to some of these guys. I see them once, like I see Boother a couple times a year. And I see Judson quite a bit. We've been friends for a long time since Bantam hockey. But most of these guys I hadn't seen in 30 years. And we would just sit around a table and talk. and it would be trash talking, it'd be chirp talking, it'd be talking about our families, talking about our kids, talking about what we did after hockey, talk about things that we're doing in life right now, comparing stories. Do you remember the time we had that Super Bowl party and that one girl brought this and that, and you did this and that, and they're like, no, I remember it different. And then we would start connecting all the dots. And to me, it almost felt like therapeutic. It was like just putting a big puzzle back together. And all of us, I think, realized we only had certain pieces of the puzzle, and we came together. And I think we realized we're probably not going to do this again, right? And there were some guys like Potomsky passed away a few years ago. Would have been great. His sister came, Wendy. It was awesome. So she was representing Potomsky family. But we had things like that, and a couple other guys that were not in the best of health, where we all sort of looked at each other and said, we might not have another chance to do this again. And so I think we just lived in the moment. I know it's a little cliche, but I think we lived in the moment. We just soaked it in, and we spent all the time together. Like nobody broke off into different groups. We all sat down together. We went bowling. The Walleye had us bowling and doing things like that. And we're like, bowling, oh my God, we don't want to go bowling. And then we go to bowling alley and we have the best time ever. We're drinking beer, and Deasley's trying to Uber there. And then Hicksy's told him that they canceled the bowling, and then Deasley cancels his Uber, and then Hicksy's laughing at him and teasing him. And then Deasley gets all mad and says, I'm going to come beat you up. I mean, it's just stupid stuff like that. Like the whole bowling thing. Hicksy's on his phone, like laughing. We're like, Hicksy, what are you doing? He's like, I just told Deasley we're leaving right now because he's getting in his Uber. And then Deasley says, I just canceled my Uber. And then we're like, we're still here, Deasley. We've been here for like 5 hours. And then Deasley shows up, and then Hicksy runs away because Deasley wanted to beat him up. So, like, exactly. It was the exact same relationship they had 30 years ago. And it was just nonstop doing stuff like that. We closed a couple bars. But it was a great turnout. Almost everybody showed up. It was a better turnout than I thought they'd be able to get. And it was fun. I don't think we'll have a chance to do that again.
Yeah, it was really well executed by the Walleye.
Oh, they crushed it.
Yeah. But then go back down memory lane, though, celebrating the back-to-back championships. What was that like at the time when it happened?
When it happened?
Oh yeah, back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, that was pure insanity. There were no guardrails. So you probably heard the stories. It like that was I would say, and I'm not exaggerating, that was probably five solid days of partying and drinking, no sleeping. And probably, what the guys do now when they win the Stanley, you're on adrenaline. It's pure adrenaline. I'll talk specifically about the first year. The second year was a little different. We won it away, and the team, great team, but it's a little bit different. The first year was like just really, really, really special. And we just did everything. We did everything together. You've heard the story. I was sitting so we're at the Consol Tavern. There's squid hanging from the light fixtures outside. The Consol Tavern over on the east side, it probably has a maximum occupancy of maybe 30, and there's probably 5,000 people in there. Everyone from the rink came over there. You can't get anywhere. We're trying to get beers. I'm sitting at the bar. We're drinking beers. The cup is on the bar. I'm sitting right next to Jablonski, and somebody's like, let's raise a toast. Yes. I mean, like the 500th toast of the night. Jabber grabs the cup, throws it in the air like this, and ceiling fan whacked. Like I heard, like he was right next to me. I'm like, what the fuck? Pulls it down. There's a gash. You still see it. If you saw, they brought that cup to the reunion, and the gash is still there. And literally, like Jabber, like sheepishly just puts it back on the bar and just goes on and drink his beer, like nothing ever happened. I'm like, you don't see that. You don't see that every day. And then, we're in the bar. I think maybe 2 days later, we're in the bar, and Al Roberts, awesome guy. He had a busted wrist or a hand, right? So he played in a cast. He's got one of those playing casts on, and we're in the bar. It's probably noon. We're completely hammered, and he's like, I gotta get this thing off. I'm like, does anyone have a knife? So somebody brings over. So somebody has a toolbox behind the bar. They bring out like a Bowie knife and a pair of pliers. And there's a picture I have somewhere. I don't think you're allowed to do this anymore, right? It's probably a little dangerous, but we got a picture of Al drinking a beer like this, and I'm cutting off the cast with a knife and a pair of pliers. He just wanted it off. There were no doctors around. I had him sign a waiver, but it was just like things like that. We didn't give any thought to it. It was fun. And he trusted me not to cut his arm off. Whether or not that was the right decision, I don't know, but he did.
He still has an arm.
He's still, yeah. No, he's doing just fine up in Ann Arbor. But oh, that's another funny story. He did have one of the best birthday parties. This was before the championship. One night, you'll probably hear this from some of the other guys. Chris always would let us have our fun. Like, he knew what needed to be done to build chemistry and culture, right? He was not just like a taskmaster. He liked to have fun. We went out for Al Roberts' birthday. We went to Arnie's, of course. And we had a practice the next morning, and we drank. We celebrated his birthday. I mean, I don't know, it's probably his 25th birthday. It's not like a special birthday, but we decided to have a birthday celebration. I remember doing shots of Jägermeister. I don't think I've touched it since. And tequila. And to keep in mind, this is on the Storm tab, right? We never paid for any of this stuff. I don't know if anyone did, but I know that we didn't. And the next day of practice, guys are puking. McSorley and McSorley's like trying to make a skate, and like it's just not, like, guys are just green, they're puking, and he's like, what the fuck's wrong with you guys? And I think I was the one that said, I said, last night we were celebrating Al's birthday. He's like, fuck Al's birthday. And then he skated away, and I see him start laughing. He starts laughing, right? Because he knows, like, he's trying to pretend like he's mad, but he's like, I can't let them think that it's, completely okay to do that. And again, that's just one of like 500 stories. If you ask anybody, we were doing that stuff every day. There was no down days. We were on the road. We were winning. We were fighting. We're down in Nashville, where they thought I was like a pork meal, right? Suey. So they would, we'd be down in Nashville, and they'd have a picture of a pig, and they'd be yelling, Suey. And I look up, and they're like, we ate you for dinner last night. I'm like, oh, that's a good one. Here I am. I'm in the coast. Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Appreciate that. There was no downtime. You know what the other thing I just thought of that was what made this good, and why I think it would be hard to replicate now? Think about what's different. Think about what's different than now. We had no cell phones, no social media. You didn't go on the bus, and you're not scrolling social media. You're not doing stuff. We went on the bus together, and I think that first year we traveled 25,000 miles. So we're on the bus all the time. We're going to Erie and Johnstown and Columbus and Hampton Roads and Roanoke and Birmingham. We're on the bus all the time. Think about it, with no cell phones, no social media, no camera. All we did was hang out together, play euchre in the back of I'm a really good euchre player. Like, I can dominate euchre because I played 1,000 hands in the back of a bus with some really good euchre players. And we watched movies, and we watched the same movies. You asked the guys what movies you watch. It was Slapshot. It was Can't Buy Me Love, and Bull Durham. And we watched the same movies over and over again. And it just like that. That creates that bond, right? I don't know that you can do that now. I mean, I think, and this is just me, I think that whole experience would be, if not completely different, then very different if we all have cell phones and social media. Because those things don't allow you to live in the moment. We were living in the moment like times 10 because we didn't have any of that distraction. And McSorley was like the task. He just kept everybody in the pot together and made sure that we just kept sort of stewing around and having a good time. And it just worked perfectly. I'm so glad. I think about that. I'm like, I'm so glad we didn't have cell phones then.
Yeah.
It would have been different. I mean, we just hung out on the bus and played cards, played poker, and played euchre, and watched movies. And you got to do stuff like that to build the chemistry that we had.
Yeah, you just hope the kids nowadays are at least putting them down sometimes on the bus and doing stuff like that, having a good time. And some of them are, but
yeah, I hope so. I hope there are coaches and organizations that are old school and appreciate like the value of that stuff. It's probably hard to do though.
Yeah, you got a couple more stories for us? Let us hear them.
This is one of my favorites. So Barry Potomsky, who passed away a few years ago, just an awesome guy, super, just like a good-spirited, fun-loving guy. Obviously a tough guy and a fighter, but you hear this all the time. Those are the nicest guys, right? The nicest guy, just there's always smiling and a fun guy to be around. A little bit mischievous though. And so the first year, that first championship year, I was in an apartment, awful apartment, thin windows. You could feel the wind come through, right? So this is the East Coast League, right? We're in an apartment making $200 a week, and it's freezing cold out, and the wind's just blowing through the window. And you have to put that plastic up on the window, which didn't work either. So I'm sharing an apartment with Rick Judson and Pat Pilipuk. And it was a pretty fun apartment. We hosted a lot of parties, and again, we were always together as a team and hosted. And we had hosted a party one night, and then we cleared everybody out. I'm going to say maybe 3:30ish in the morning. I can't remember. And we're in bed. We're sleeping. It's been a long night. All of a sudden, we hear on the door. We're like, what? So I'm in my underwear. I'm probably not completely sober. It's freezing cold outside. It's in the middle of a blizzard. It's winter. Judson's getting up. Pilipuk is like sort of meandering around doing something. I don't think he wants to get up, but me and Judson and I get up, and I open the door, and it's Poto. It's Potomsky standing in the door, covered in snow. And if you ask Rick, you can ask Judson the story. He'll tell you the same. He's standing in the door, and at this time it's probably like 4:30 in the morning. Okay, so it's 4:30 in the morning. He knocks on our door. I don't know if he had shoes on or no shoes on. It's freezing cold out. It's January. He's covered in snow. We're like, Poto, what's wrong? He's like, you gotta help me. These guys are wanting to fight me. Judson and I are like, is this really happening? What? So what do you think happens? That's all he says. Judson and I put our boots on. We put a coat on, and we're like, let's go. So Poto turns around. Judson and I are right behind him. We're like, we got you. Let's go see what's going on. He takes like Poto's hammered. He takes like 3 steps out in the snow, falls face first into the snow. And I still remember this to this day. Juddy and I would talk about that. Juddy and I looked at each other like, is he just drunk falling around the snow, or do you think he's really like in trouble with these guys, right? And so we weren't sure what to believe. So he gets himself up. He dusts himself off. He's like, no, you guys got to follow me. You got to follow me. It's 4:30 in the morning. We've got underwear on, like a jacket and like winter boots. We're not dressed to be outside. We were partying all night. But what do? It's Toledo hockey. We follow them. We're like, okay, we'll follow you, Poto, wherever this story takes us. We go out and we start to get off of the side road of the apartment. There's like a main road. It's 4:30 in the morning, and we see a pickup truck coming with headlights. And it's sort of coming in, and then Poto's like maybe 10, 20 feet in front of us. He's going faster than us. Juddy and I are trying to figure out what the hell we're doing out here. And all of a sudden the truck drives by him, and there's a bunch of guys in the back of the truck. Poto does a Superman dive trying to tackle a guy in the back of the truck. Like he literally was full outstretched Superman dive, and he missed the guy. The guy like ducked like this, and he went off, and Poto rolls around in the street. The truck stops. All like 5 guys get out of the back of the truck with tire irons. And Juddy and I are like, what the fuck's going on? And they're like, is this your friend? And we're like, yeah. And they're like, we're just trying to plow the street, and he keeps attacking us. and Poto's like, no, I'm not. And now Juddy and I are putting the piece of the puzzle together. We're like, that makes more sense. And these guys literally, they got the salt bags, and they're just the workers that are trying to clear the snow off the road in the apartment complex. And apparently Poto was out like attacking them, and so the guy had a tire iron, and we said, okay, well, we're gonna take him home. You guys just get in the truck and go. And then we grabbed Poto. We went back in the house and probably had another beer. And so it was a collection of things like that, and it was so much fun. Again, the hockey was good, and the fans were great, but it was just stories like that and the camaraderie that we built, and the reason why the reunion was so special and so fun, and just it was just like there's a million more stories like that. And I feel like it's a little cliche, but I feel like you don't have many opportunities like that to have something that special.
Yeah.
And so just preparing for this podcast, I literally wrote down a page of notes, and it was fun for me. I'm like, oh, I forgot all about that. Remember this? And I'm like, you could get any one of those guys on those two teams, and they're going to have similar but probably different stories as well.
Where were you when McSorley allegedly kicked the guy in the face? Like,
so Hicksy. So I remember that, where I was, and what Hicksy missed in that story is, it was a brawl, and I got paired up with, guess who? Spenrath, the big guy, right? So I get paired up with Ogie Oglethorpe, and we're going at it. And I think he gave me a couple Barney Rubbles on my head, he's just a big guy. And then the ref came in and broke us up. And then Oglethorpe, Spenrath, got loose and sucker punched Hicksy in the mouth. So that's the way I remember it. And when he got kicked by McSorley, I don't know what I was doing. I think I might have been tied up with another guy. But I do remember that he got loose, and then I felt guilty for that. But the ref let him loose. And then Hicksy I think Hicksy was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It was so funny because either Duncan called me or I called Duncan, and we got to talking about it. I was like, yeah, Hicksy told us this crazy story, McSorley kicking a guy in the face, and he word for word, same story as Hicksy, and I'm just in tears on the phone. And then
he might have been standing right next to him. That was a wild game. Chris is tough as nails, and he's a competitor, but that's what he demanded out of everybody, right? You've heard the same thing from guys, and that's, to me, I think that's fun. Mediocrity is not fun. Chris wanted to win and wanted to beat the shit out of everyone every night, and he built a team that loved doing that.
And led by example by kicking a guy in the face. It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
That's just old school hockey, baby. I love it.
Well, I don't think at that time, anyone on our team, I think if our owner would have been on the bench, nobody liked Spenrath, right? I mean, he was just big, mean, burly guy, probably one of the toughest guys in the league, and just a big guy. But keep in mind, McSorley is also a showman, right? He knows, right? These people came. Remember what I said? They paid their hard-earned money. They came to see a show. You will put on a show. So whether you've seen the video of him ripping his shirt off and throwing the sticks and doing all that stuff. I mean, that's equal parts pure madness and equal parts showman. You put those two things together, you get McSorley. So
my dad told me, he's like, I was at a game one night and he just lost his mind. I think everything on the bench was on the ice and he's throwing clothes everywhere.
But he was that same way as a player for the Gold Diggers. I mean, the Gold Diggers had really tough teams, and McSorley was one of the toughest too.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was fun.
Anything else you got in there, Andy, for us for any final stories?
I think we covered. I think we covered the good ones.
You can always reach out to us too.
No, I think it's just. I mean, it's why every kid grows up wants to play hockey. It's just different, right? It's different. The teams are different. The cultures, the relationships are different. It's special. And the older we get, the more we realize how fortunate we were, right? And we're all in our 50s now, and we've got kids and grandkids and families and stuff like that. But you put us together, and it's 30 years ago, and it's just. It's hard to replicate that, and we were in the right place at the right time. The planets were aligned. I don't know if you could ever do that again. And McSorley was a huge part of it. I'm sure Hicksy said I think I said the same thing to McSorley I'm like, man, these were the best 2 years. I appreciate you giving me a chance, you giving me a role and telling me what the role was and making sure I was in the right role.
Not to go end to end.
Not to go end to end. No, I remember you will never be on the power play, Suhy. So,
oh man,
you will never.
Well, Andy, like same, it goes for every one of you guys in the team that's come on the show. Thank you. Like hearing these stories, especially for Nick and I, getting to put these pieces together for us to kind of picture what it was like back in the day as a Storm fan. It's just been an awesome experience for us. And I just appreciate you guys being able to come on here and share this stuff and be able to talk about it. It's an amazing thing. So thank you to all of you, and especially you for some of these. These are legendary stories, man.
Well, you'll never meet a hockey player that doesn't like telling hockey stories, right? That's
It's true.
That's what Diesel told us too.
That's you notice I didn't say any Diesel stories. I'm like,
I think my favorite part about him is the high fives to the corner, like because the glass was so short.
did he tell you he's the toast of Toledo? Like he calls himself the toast of Toledo.
I don't think he did.
He literally that's what we tease him about. Like when we call him, like Corvo just calls him the toast. Like his nickname is the toast of Toledo. Little known fact, he scored the game-winning goal for both championships, right?
Yeah.
And the clinching win. And he will tell you that if you don't know that, I would be surprised that he didn't tell you that. And he is definitely the toast of Toledo. He loved putting on a show. Like who high fives people? Like he would skate, if they let him, he would skate around the whole ice high fiving like for 10 minutes after every goal. He'd be like, give me 10 minutes, I got to high five everybody in the front row. And he'd be like, Diesel, why do you need to do that? He's like, I'm doing it for them. They want it. That's what he would say.
They pay good money to be here, you know.
They pay good money to be here. I'm doing it for them.
That's so great.
Yeah. No, good guys. So appreciate you guys giving me the platform to tell some of these stories. It's always fun, and just makes me appreciate how lucky we were to participate in Toledo hockey. Nothing better. Everyone thinks they've got the best market and the best hockey. I think Toledo actually does, and it was my, don't tell anyone I said funnest 2 years of my life. So fun.
Yeah. It's blown Nick and I away just watch it. Like even nowadays, I can't imagine back then, but even nowadays, it's such a great market for hockey. And everyone, if they've never been to a game, needs to be down there. Like Hawk said it best when he came on the show the first time, it was an NHL experience at an affordable rate that you could go with your family and have a good time.
Yeah, and he's such a good guy and such a great player, and watching him do the Hixie butter churn was epic. I mean, it just things like that just brought the whole weekend together, right? It's like with them wearing the Storm uniforms. I don't know if you saw, like they wore the Storm uniforms, and like it gave me chills. I'm like, that looks like how we used to look, right?
Yeah.
And the Walleye just went so over the top. It was so good. And then you have Hawk doing the butter churn. I'm like, it doesn't get any better than this.
I'm so mad because like hearing all these stories now, I wish I was at the reunion. I wish I was at the Toledo games. Like it's just got so much more buy-in from me, like hearing from you guys to like bring all the stories in. Because I came from Flint, so like I had the Generals. I didn't know Toledo hockey at that time. So
yeah,
I'm like FOMO, missing out on all those good times and stories and the connections that you guys had. And it just kind of brings me back to my college days of, hanging out with the guys.
I wish teams did it more often. I mean, we joke, we're like, we should do this every year. We're like,
we'll be there.
We're like, I don't think our livers can't handle it, right? At our age, we cannot do this every year. We certainly want to try to do it more frequently than every 30 years. And maybe if we, in the next 5 years, I think we're going to try to get something together. But whether it's Flint or Saginaw or all those teams should do what the Walleye did and make an investment and an effort in just maintaining that lineage and bringing back the old players. I mean, the guys, and I sent Joe Napoli and some of the other guys a thank you. I'm like, this meant so, you probably don't know, but this meant so much to the guys. The guys are all so thankful. They had so much fun, and I wish we could do it more often.
I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, seriously, man. Thank you. This is incredible.
Amazing.
This was fun. Good luck with the show and the other guys. And if you need something, you've got my contact information. You can always get a hold of me too.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something you'd love to learn? As an adult, do you make time to learn new things as often as you like, or was that lost in childhood? Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something you'd like to learn? Gardening, a new language, or maybe how to finally beat your best friend in bowling? Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back-to-school era can come at any age. Therapy can help address anxiety or fear of speaking another language, or help you learn your own personal learning strategy. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with licensed therapists and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN.
And welcome back to Just the Three of Us. Boys, that was an all-time one right there. Holy smokes. That was a lot of fun. Travis, again, thank you for all the work you're doing on the back end here to get these Storm interviews lined up for us to do. Exposing us to what was the era of the Toledo Storm for us upper Michigan guys not understanding what people were talking about early on. We understand now. And God, those were the good old days, and they had a lot of fun. But we're going to go with the biggest takeaways from this interview. Nick, what was your biggest takeaway?
Oh, biggest takeaway? I don't know. I just feel, and like I told him, like I just wish I was at the anniversary event. Like now, like knowing all of the stories and like how tight group these guys were, like it felt like during that time in history, really, it was like it was just so intimate with the fans and with the team, and it was just so connected, and like having the right people in the right role, like he said, was huge because like you said, the planets all aligned, and like that's what really made that time special for him. So today, like researching it, like I saw the draft class, I was like, holy crap, like I didn't know he had been drafted by the Wings until I started doing some research on him. So that was super cool. And just his kind of like the other thing is like his time at camp, because like we're right here at camp time, and kind of know the insides of how that went for him, and kind of what our guys are going to be going through later on. So,
yeah, I didn't even think about that before. And, we've done these interviews with other active players, and we never really talk about camp. So we don't really understand that. But hearing what it was like back in the day makes me want to add that to the question list in the future with other guys that we might talk to. Just what is that experience like, especially with camp coming up? So,
and I think the other thing too is like we do ask some of the same questions a lot, but we're getting that different point of view. We're getting that different perspective from that player. So I think that's the other thing that I really like that he stated in the beginning was like, hey, like we might hear these stories, but it's going to be a little different based off of what my experience through it. So I like that aspect too.
Yeah, and we do, like you said, we ask a lot of the same questions, and that is on purpose, just so we can get those different perspectives, because maybe one of those nights one guy had a few less drinks and he remembers more of the story. So it's it's all time, man. Travis, biggest takeaway for you, man?
Oh, just there's so many, right? I mean, it's just crazy how different the world was back then versus now, what they could get away with, what we couldn't get away with in today's world. Just how much it's been kind of my answer for all this, but how much they loved being here and how much they remember winning those 2 championships or 1 championship based off who the player was, and what that means to them and how truly special it was to not only them, but also the city. I mean, when this drought ends for the Walleye, I mean, it's going to be absolute bedlam whenever it happens. It's going to be madness downtown, but it's just crazy to hear all the wild stories, which is honestly my favorite part of these guys from the 90s that played. Man, the stories are just unbelievable.
When it happens, we will be there. I have to experience what it's going to be like down there, because it's good. Like you said, it's going to be insane.
It's going to be a lot of people calling off work the next day.
The whole week, I'm going to call off. I'm just going to stay with you, Travis.
It's not a one day.
We're going to go party
there, buddy. Yeah.
Hopefully they win it on like a Friday where we got a couple days.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, like you guys said, those are all good takeaways. Mine, like you said, Travis, with what you can get away with, you definitely couldn't get away with chasing down plow drivers in the snow when you're drunk, trying to fight them. That story was freaking incredible. I didn't know where that one was going, and I loved every second of it. But just like you said, man, the love for Toledo and the respect they all have for each other, and how when they get back together, it's just like they go back 30 years. The chirps start flying. the beers start flowing. It's just so cool. That brotherhood is something so special. And yeah, I'm so thankful we've gotten to sit down and talk with a bunch of these guys. And we still have 2 more parts of the series to come this summer. So we're excited about that. 2 more all-time interviews. I'm sure they're going to be. I can't wait to get the perspectives on these stories from these 2 guys. And I know one of them is going to have probably a different perspective on a lot of stories based on what we've heard about them. So it's going to be interesting, man. But again, Travis, well done getting these set up. We hope the fans are enjoying them. Let us know in the comments if you were in the Toledo area at that time, what your favorite memory of the Storm was. Maybe it's something that we see and we'll bring up in these next 2 interviews, but let us know what you think. And yeah, we always appreciate the feedback on them, and please share those memories because Nick and I love reading about them and hearing about them. So with that, boys, anything else you got to add?
Yeah, just one thing. I think it's going to be pretty cool. And the next 2 interviews, I mean, one won the ultimate prize. So that'll be kind of fun to talk to and learn about. So something to look forward to there.
That was a good little teaser, Travis. Well done. Nick, anything for you?
I had something and I completely forgot. So
classic.
Sorry, buddy.
Classic.
Well, with that, everyone, thank you for tuning in to part 4 of the Summer of the Storm series. And of course, as always, thank you to our sponsors, Everything Hockey. Make sure you head over to everythinghockey.com. Use code WEST to save a few bucks off your order. And shout out to DraftKings and BetterHelp as well for being our network sponsors, and the Hockey Podcast Network for being fantastic hosts for us. Everybody, have a fantastic week. We will talk to you again soon. Until then, go Griffins, go Walleye.
Love you. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Hockeytown West Podcast. Be sure to check us out on Twitter at HockeytownWPod and your host, Nick at GR Hockey Guy and Brandon at Brandon GR Hockey.